Hello. Tonight, you travel far beyond the reach of written memory to a Europe that is slowly awakening from the long embrace of ice. Beneath quiet skies and drifting clouds, rivers begin to find their paths once more, forests gather across empty valleys, and the first faint footsteps of future civilizations wait patiently beyond the horizon, hidden among mist and ancient stone. You stand in a landscape that feels impossibly spacious. The great ice sheets that once covered much of northern Europe have retreated, leaving behind rolling hills, scattered lakes, and broad plains where silence seems to stretch for miles. The air feels cool and clean, carrying only the distant sounds of water moving through newly formed channels. Across the land, morning fog settles gently over meadows and riverbanks. Small pools reflect pale sunlight like scattered mirrors. Everything appears unhurried, as though the continent itself is taking a slow breath after thousands of years of winter. Even the clouds seem content to drift without any particular destination in mind. So, before you get completely comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But only if you truly enjoy what we're creating here. And while you settle in, feel free to leave a comment sharing your location and local time. It is always comforting to imagine listeners gathering from different corners of the world, each joining this quiet journey beneath a different sky. Now slowly dim the lights. Perhaps turn on a fan, letting the steady hum of the air fill the room. And in that gentle rhythm, we quietly step into tonight's journey together. You wander beside one of the countless rivers that now weave across post-glacial Europe. These waterways are young in geological terms, yet they already move with calm confidence. Their surfaces catch the soft light of dawn, and their banks are lined with grasses that sway so gently they almost seem to be dreaming. Below your feet lie layers of history that no human has yet recorded. Thick deposits of gravel, clay, and sand tell silent stories about the retreating glaciers. Each layer forms a chapter written not with words but with stone, pressure, and time. Geologists today can read these layers much like a patient reader studies the pages of an ancient book. The lakes surrounding you are equally young. Many were born when enormous blocks of glacial ice became trapped in the earth and slowly melted away. Their waters remain clear and still. Looking across one of them feels almost like looking through a window into another age entirely, where time itself moves at a gentler pace. Wildlife flourishes in this recovering world. Red deer move through the forest with quiet elegance, pausing occasionally among the trees. Massive aurochs, the wild ancestors of modern cattle, graze in open clearings. They are powerful animals, though from a distance one might imagine them as oversized cows attending a very serious outdoor meeting. Gray wolves travel along woodland edges, alert but unhurried. They belong to an ecosystem that remains balanced through countless natural relationships. Predators and prey follow rhythms refined over generations. Nothing rushes. Nothing competes with the endless notifications that dominate modern life. The forest remains blissfully free of email. As centuries pass, forests continue expanding across the continent. Birch and pine arrive first in many regions, followed by oak, elm, and hazel. Together they create vast canopies stretching across the landscape. From above, Europe would appear like an immense green ocean, its leaves rising and falling with every passing breeze. The climate, however, is not entirely constant. Archaeological and geological evidence reveals a remarkable event that occurs roughly 8,200 years ago. Temperatures across parts of the northern hemisphere suddenly cool. Scientists believe that enormous quantities of fresh water entered the North Atlantic, disrupting ocean circulation patterns that had previously remained stable. This cooling period lasts for generations. It leaves traces preserved within ice cores, lake sediments, and ancient pollen records discovered by modern researchers. While the change is significant, nature responds gradually. Forests shift, animal populations adapt, rivers continue flowing. The landscape accepts transformation with a calm patience that feels almost reassuring. As you wander through this ancient landscape, you begin to notice how naturally everything belongs together. Rivers carve gentle paths through the earth, shaping valleys that gather moisture and life. Over centuries, forests spread across those valleys, their roots holding the soil in place while creating shelter for countless creatures. The seasons move quietly through this interconnected world, guiding migration, growth, and renewal without hurry. Herds follow familiar routes, trees respond to changing light, and waterways continue their patient journeys. Each part supports the next, until the entire continent feels like a vast tapestry, woven slowly by nature across thousands of years. The days pass quietly here, Sunlight filters through leaves and dances across moss-covered ground. Insects hum softly above wetlands. Birds travel between branches carrying songs that echo across the forest. Even the passing of time feels different, measured not by clocks, but by the movement of shadows and the changing color of the sky. Eventually, subtle signs of human presence begin to appear along the quiet waterways. On sheltered riverbanks protected from harsh winds, small groups establish temporary camps beside the flowing water. Their footsteps press gently into damp earth, while simple hearths glow beneath the evening sky, sending thin ribbons of smoke through the still air. Though their traces seem fragile, they slowly become part of the landscape itself. Fire-blackened stones, discarded tools, and faint paths remain hidden beneath future layers of soil. These early communities live in close harmony with their surroundings, moving with the seasons and relying upon the rhythms of rivers, forests, and migrating animals. Archaeologists uncover fragments of their lives thousands of years later. Stone tools, animal bones, hearth remains, and scattered artifacts reveal careful adaptation rather than conquest. These early inhabitants understand rivers, seasons, and migration routes with remarkable precision. Their knowledge develops through observation, memory, and experience accumulated across generations. As evening settles across the forests, golden light slowly fades beneath the trees. Mist gathers once more over the rivers and lakes. Somewhere beyond the darkness, families rest beside small fires while the sounds of the wilderness continue around them. The continent remains vast, mysterious, and largely untouched, and so you pause at the edge of this quiet beginning. Europe has awakened from ice, rivers have carved their paths, forests have claimed the land, and the first communities have started to gather beside gentle waters. In the distance, new chapters wait patiently among fields, stones, and future settlements, ready to emerge as the story continues forward. The night deepens gently over the forests you have just crossed, and as the centuries pass, almost unnoticed, new patterns begin to appear beside Europe's rivers. The wilderness remains vast and quiet, yet along the fertile banks of the Danube and Rhine, small communities settle into rhythms that feel as steady as the flow of water itself. You find yourself standing near one of these early farming villages, belonging to what modern archaeologists call the linear Ban-Karamic culture, often shortened to LBK. Around 5500 BCE, these communities spread gradually across Central Europe, not as conquering armies but as families carrying seeds, livestock, and generations of practical knowledge. The rivers serve as natural pathways. Their waters connect distant regions and provide fertile soil renewed by seasonal flooding. From above, the settlements resemble tiny islands of human activity resting within an endless sea of woodland. Smoke rises softly from cooking fires and disappears into the cool morning air. Long wooden houses stand quietly within broad clearings surrounded by fields and distant forests. Their timber frames rise from the earth with simple strength, built by communities that understand the character of every beam, post, and rope. Smoke drifts gently from roof openings, blending into the calm air above the settlement. Some of these remarkable structures stretch well over 100 feet in length. From a distance, they appear almost like entire neighborhoods gathered beneath a single roof. They might remind a modern observer of prehistoric apartment buildings, although thankfully they operate without monthly rent, maintenance fees, or arguments over parking spaces. Inside, daily life unfolds according to rhythms that rarely change. Families rise with the first light of dawn and begin their familiar tasks. Livestock are tended, tools are repaired, and grain harvested from nearby fields is prepared for meals. Each activity follows patterns refined through generations of experience. Children grow within the steady world of observation and practice. They watch parents, grandparents, and skilled neighbors perform countless everyday tasks. Knowledge passes naturally from one generation to the next, much like sunlight feeding young trees. Learning is not separated from life itself, but woven quietly into each passing day. The fields surrounding the villages contain wheat, barley, and other crops introduced from earlier farming traditions that traveled gradually from the Near East into Europe. Each planting season begins with familiar tasks. Each harvest brings familiar rewards. Life moves in circles rather than straight lines, creating a comforting sense of continuity. As you walk through one of these settlements, nothing appears rushed. There are no crowded roads, no urgent schedules, and certainly no alarms reminding anyone about a forgotten online password. Time is measured through changing weather, growing crops, and the steady movement of the sun across the sky. Archaeological discoveries reveal just how thoughtfully these early farming communities organized the spaces around them. Carefully dug storage pits help preserve grain through changing seasons, while sturdy fences protect livestock from wandering predators. Deep wells provide dependable access to fresh water throughout the year. Every feature reflects generations of practical knowledge shaped by observation, patience, and a close relationship with the surrounding environment. One particularly fascinating discovery comes from several ancient linear band ceramic wells uncovered in Germany. Deep within waterlogged layers of earth, archaeologists recovered wooden timbers preserved in extraordinary condition. Despite resting underground for more than 7,000 years, many pieces remain remarkably intact. Their survival offers researchers a rare opportunity to study some of the oldest known examples of wooden architecture in Europe. The villages themselves often display an equally remarkable sense of continuity. Excavations across Central Europe suggest that many settlements remain occupied for centuries with relatively little disruption. House designs change only gradually, agricultural methods evolve at a measured pace, and social structures remain surprisingly stable. Such long-lasting balance is uncommon in human history and contributes to the calm atmosphere that defines this period. The surrounding landscape reflects this stability. Forest edges are carefully managed. Fields expand slowly rather than dramatically. Livestock graze in designated areas. Human activity reshapes the environment, but it does so with a measured pace that feels almost conversational, as though people and nature are negotiating rather than competing. The Danube River continues flowing through this world like a patient guide. Stretching across much of Europe, it connects communities separated by great distances. Ideas travel along its waters. Techniques spread from village to village. The river becomes more than a source of water. It becomes a thread weaving together countless lives. You notice that pottery occupies an important place within daily life. Throughout linear band ceramic settlements, carefully shaped vessels sit beside hearths and storage areas. These pots hold grain, water, and preserved foods that support daily routines. Their presence reflects both practical necessity and the quiet skill of craftspeople working with earth and fire. The culture itself takes its name from the distinctive decorations covering many of these vessels. Fine linear bands and incised geometric patterns wrap around curved surfaces with remarkable consistency. Although created by hand, the designs often appear precise and balanced, revealing traditions that have been carefully maintained and passed between generations. Many of these decorative motifs feel deeply connected to the agricultural rhythms surrounding village life. Repeating lines flow across the pottery, much like furrows stretching through cultivated fields. Looking at them can feel almost meditative, as though each pattern quietly echoes the steady cycles of planting, growth, harvest, and renewal. Beyond the settled clearings, vast forests continue dominating much of the European landscape. Red deer move silently through shaded glades while birds nest among towering oak branches. Occasionally, wolves pass beyond the edge of human awareness. Villages remain small islands of activity surrounded by an immense and ancient natural world. As centuries pass, subtle changes begin appearing beneath this stable surface. Communities establish wider connections with neighboring regions, and certain objects travel farther than before. Some gathering places gradually gain special importance, drawing visitors from multiple settlements and creating opportunities for exchange, cooperation, and shared cultural experiences. Archaeological discoveries suggest that long-distance contacts become more common than once believed. Materials, ideas, and traditions move quietly between distant communities through networks that span considerable distances. Though modest compared with later civilizations, these connections gently lay the foundations for broader social transformations that will shape the next chapter of prehistoric Europe. For now, however, the rivers continue their gentle course through fields and forests. The longhouses remain standing beneath changing seasons. Generations live, work, and rest within familiar cycles. And somewhere beyond the horizon, among distant hills and open skies, great stones are waiting to be raised, marking the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's unfolding story. The rivers still flow quietly through the fields of prehistoric Europe, and the longhouses remain scattered across fertile valleys. Yet as generations come and go, something new begins to appear upon the landscape. Far beyond the villages, on wind-swept hills and open plains, great stones slowly rise from the earth like silent companions keeping watch over time itself. You travel westward across Atlantic Europe, where communities separated by vast distances somehow share a similar idea. From the Iberian Peninsula to the distant shores of Britain and Ireland, people begin constructing megalithic monuments. These structures stand not as fortresses or palaces, but as enduring markers between the human world and the rhythms of nature. The first impression is one of extraordinary patience. Every stone weighs several tons, yet none appears forced into place by urgency or haste. These monuments may require the efforts of multiple generations to complete, their construction unfolding gradually alongside changing seasons. Unlike many modern projects driven by schedules and deadlines, these builders seem content to work according to the slower rhythm of time itself. You approach a solitary dolmen resting upon a gentle grassy rise beneath an open sky. Enormous stone slabs support an equally impressive capstone overhead, creating a structure that resembles a table built for giants. Fortunately, no archaeological evidence suggests any prehistoric giants ever complained about the furniture. Through centuries of wind, rain, and shifting weather, the monument continues standing with quiet dignity. Nearby, passage tombs emerge from the landscape like gentle hills. Their entrances lead into carefully constructed chambers hidden beneath mounds of earth and stone. These places serve both practical and symbolic purposes, connecting communities with memory, ancestry, and the mysterious passage of time that touches every generation. Inside one of these tombs, darkness feels calm rather than unsettling. The air remains cool and still. Stone surfaces carry subtle marks left by ancient hands thousands of years ago. You can almost imagine the quiet footsteps of those who once entered carrying offerings, stories, and hopes for futures they would never personally witness. Across parts of Brittany, Ireland, Wales, and Britain, standing stones appear in astonishing numbers. Some stand alone. Others form long alignments stretching across the countryside. These arrangements create patterns that remain partly mysterious even today. Archaeologists continue studying their purpose, though many likely hold ceremonial, social, and astronomical significance. The sky plays an important role in this world. Farming communities depend upon seasonal cycles, and careful observation of the heavens becomes increasingly valuable. The movements of the sun provide reliable markers throughout the year. Sunrise and sunset offer information that can guide planting, harvesting, and communal gatherings. You soon arrive at one of the most extraordinary monuments in all of prehistoric Europe, Newgrange, nestled within the gentle landscape of modern Ireland. Constructed around 3200 BCE, this immense passage tomb is older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Its grassy mound, ringed with massive stones, rises quietly from the countryside like a carefully preserved memory of a distant age. As you stand before its ancient entrance, the achievement becomes even more remarkable. For more than 5,000 years, Newgrange has remained aligned with the rising sun of the winter solstice. Each year, a narrow beam of sunlight travels deep into its stone passage, illuminating the inner chamber. The precision of this alignment reveals a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles among the people who built it. Each year during the winter solstice, sunlight enters through a specially designed roof box above the entrance. As dawn breaks, a narrow beam of light travels along the passage and illuminates the inner chamber. The event lasts only a short time, yet it occurs with remarkable precision, just as it has for countless generations. The sight inspires quiet reflection. Long before written records existed in this region, people possessed the patience and observational skill required to align architecture with the movements of the heavens. Their achievement feels less like a display of power and more like a respectful conversation with the universe itself. Elsewhere across Atlantic Europe, similar relationships between monuments and celestial events continue to emerge. Certain stone rows align with sunrise points. Some chambers capture specific seasonal light. Others appear connected to lunar cycles. These patterns suggest a growing sophistication in how communities understand both landscape and sky. At the same time, daily life remains surprisingly stable. Villages continue farming familiar crops. Livestock graze in open meadows. Families pass knowledge from one generation to the next. The construction of monumental architecture does not replace ordinary life. Instead, it seems woven gently into the routines already shaping these communities. Archaeological evidence suggests that many megalithic projects require far more cooperation than a single settlement could easily provide. Transporting massive stones across uneven landscapes, preparing ceremonial grounds, and organizing construction efforts demand planning on a remarkable scale. Such undertakings likely bring together neighboring communities, encouraging collaboration and creating bonds that extend beyond everyday local relationships. The construction process itself may have been just as important as the finished monument. Families travel from nearby regions to contribute labor, share resources, and participate in communal gatherings. While stones are raised and earth is shaped, stories are exchanged, friendships are strengthened, and traditions are passed between generations beneath open skies and changing seasons. From these shared experiences, something subtle but deeply significant begins to emerge. Networks of connection slowly extend beyond individual villages and river valleys. Communities exchange techniques, ideas, and perhaps even beliefs carried across surprising distances. Though no centralized empire governs these lands, relationships spread gradually through cooperation, creating a wider cultural landscape. You can almost sense these invisible threads weaving themselves across prehistoric Europe. Similar carving styles appear hundreds of miles apart. Construction methods echo from one coastline to another. Certain symbols and artistic traditions seem to travel quietly between distant groups. The process unfolds without fanfare, much like roots spreading beneath a forest floor where growth remains unseen but constant. As evening settles over the countryside, the standing stones cast long shadows across fields touched by golden light. Birds return to their nests among nearby trees, and a cool breeze moves gently through the grass. The monuments remain exactly where they have stood for centuries, silent witnesses to changing generations, passing seasons, and the endless procession of stars across the night sky. The agricultural world that emerged beside Europe's rivers continues to thrive, yet beneath its calm surface, larger networks are taking shape. Communities are becoming increasingly connected through exchange, cooperation, and shared traditions. And somewhere beyond these ancient stones, new pathways are beginning to form, carrying objects, ideas, and influences across astonishing distances through the prehistoric world. The great stone monuments still stand quietly beneath changing skies, watching over fields, rivers, and generations that come and go. Yet beyond the visible landscape, another network is slowly taking shape. It is not built from stone, timber, or earth. Instead, it grows through countless exchanges between distant communities, linking regions that may never meet face to face. You begin your journey near the shores of the Baltic Sea. Along these windswept coastlines, waves occasionally reveal small pieces of amber washed onto beaches after storms. Their warm golden glow catches the sunlight beautifully. To ancient people, these polished fragments must have seemed almost magical, like drops of captured sunlight resting upon the sand. Amber is not a precious metal, nor is it especially useful as a tool. It is fossilized tree resin, formed over millions of years. Yet its beauty gives it extraordinary value. When held toward the light, it seems to contain entire worlds within its translucent depths. Some pieces even preserve tiny insects, creating nature's own version of a prehistoric photograph. Over time, people begin collecting these remarkable stones and carrying them far from their northern origins. The movement happens gradually, often through many exchanges rather than direct journeys. One family trades amber to a neighboring settlement. That settlement exchanges it farther south. Generation after generation, the material continues traveling across Europe. You can imagine a small amber bead passing through dozens of hands over several centuries. No single traveler carries it from the Baltic to the Mediterranean. Instead, it moves patiently through an interconnected web of relationships. In a way, amber becomes prehistoric Europe's version of a very slow delivery service, although thankfully nobody is checking tracking numbers. Every few hours, the routes formed through these exchanges are known today as the amber roads. They are not organized highways controlled by any ruler or empire. Instead, they follow rivers, valleys, mountain passes, and coastlines. Together, these pathways quietly connect distant communities across Europe, creating networks that operate through cooperation rather than centralized authority. The Danube River once again serves as a vital corridor within this growing system. Flowing through much of Europe, it links distant regions with remarkable efficiency. Over many generations, traders and travelers established familiar routes along its banks. Through these movements, the river carries not only goods, but also ideas, customs, and knowledge. As people journey along these pathways, they transport far more than physical objects. Stories travel between settlements. New techniques spread among craftspeople. Beliefs and traditions move quietly from one region to another. Over time, the exchange network becomes a living web of communication, connecting communities that may never meet directly, yet remain linked through shared contacts. Archaeological discoveries reveal just how extensive these networks eventually become. Pieces of Baltic amber have been uncovered in burial sites throughout Central Europe and in regions far to the south. Some of the most remarkable finds place northern amber within elite graves located hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles from the shores where it first washed onto the land. One particularly fascinating example comes from Bronze Age sites across the Mediterranean world. Scientific analysis has identified amber whose chemical signature matches deposits originating near the Baltic coast. Such evidence demonstrates that long-distance exchange systems operate far earlier and far more effectively than scholars once imagined, linking distant societies through networks that quietly span much of prehistoric Europe. As you travel these ancient pathways, you notice that exchange rarely feels hurried. Transactions occur within relationships built over years and generations. Trust matters. Reputation matters. Communities depend upon cooperation more than competition. The entire network functions less like a marketplace and more like an extended conversation unfolding across centuries. The objects themselves remain surprisingly modest. Amber beads, ornaments, pendants, and decorative pieces are often small enough to fit comfortably within a hand, yet their value extends beyond appearance. Possessing amber signals connection to distant worlds, it demonstrates access to networks stretching far beyond local horizons. Gradually, certain communities find themselves positioned at important crossroads within these exchange systems. Settlements near river junctions, mountain passes, or coastal routes become gathering places where people, goods, and information naturally converge. Their influence grows quietly through geography rather than conquest. You begin to see subtle differences emerging between regions. Some communities accumulate more exotic materials than others. Rare objects appear in specific graves. Ceremonial items become concentrated in particular locations. None of this resembles the rigid hierarchies of later empires. Yet patterns of prestige are beginning to develop. Anthropologists often describe prestige goods as objects whose importance comes largely from symbolism rather than practical function. Amber fits this description perfectly. A bead cannot plow a field or build a house, yet it can communicate status, identity, and participation within broader cultural networks. Meanwhile, ordinary life continues with familiar rhythms. Farmers cultivate crops, livestock graze peacefully, children grow up learning the same seasonal routines practiced by their ancestors. The exchange networks operate alongside daily existence, enhancing rather than disrupting the stable patterns that characterize much of prehistoric Europe. The growing circulation of goods gradually changes how people understand the world beyond their immediate surroundings. Most individuals never travel great distances during their lifetimes, yet objects arriving from faraway regions carry silent evidence of landscapes they may never personally witness. A piece of amber, a rare ornament, or an unfamiliar material can spark curiosity about distant horizons. Communities living deep within river valleys may never see the Baltic shoreline where amber washes onto beaches after storms. Likewise, families near the Mediterranean may know northern forests only through stories and traded objects. Even so, these exchanges quietly broaden awareness of lands beyond local experience, allowing distant regions to become part of a shared mental landscape. As generations pass, the amber pathways grow steadily more significant. They demonstrate that prehistoric Europe is far from a collection of isolated villages scattered across the continent. Instead, countless communities participate in overlapping networks of contact and exchange. Rivers, mountain passes, coastlines, and forest trails become links in a much larger web of human relationships. These connections remain largely invisible when viewed from a single settlement. Yet across centuries, they bind together landscapes separated by enormous distances. Goods move from hand to hand, ideas travel alongside them, and traditions occasionally follow similar routes. Like threads woven through fabric, these exchanges help create a broader cultural tapestry stretching across much of Europe. Evening settles gently over the ancient trade routes. Along Baltic shores, waves continue leaving amber upon the sand, while far to the south, polished beads rest within quiet burials. Between these distant regions, exchange networks flow steadily through time, and certain communities gradually begin gathering both wealth and symbolic influence. The amber pathways continue extending across Europe like delicate threads woven through forests, river valleys, and distant coastlines. Along these familiar routes, another remarkable innovation begins its gradual spread across the continent. Hidden beneath hills and mountains rest valuable mineral deposits that will slowly influence society. The change arrives quietly, following the same patient rhythm that has guided generations before it. You stand among rolling highlands where copper-bearing rock lies concealed beneath layers of earth and stone. For countless generations, hunters, farmers, and travelers passed these places without recognizing their significance. Eventually, however, observant individuals begin noticing unusual stones marked by distinctive colors. Their curiosity leads to experimentation, and those early discoveries open an entirely new chapter in human creativity, knowledge, and technological achievement. At first, metalworking appears almost magical to those witnessing it. Certain rocks are transformed through intense heat into entirely new materials. Furnaces built from clay, stone, and careful craftsmanship become places of experimentation and discovery. The process demands patience, observation, and knowledge preserved through generations, making early metallurgists seem remarkably similar to practical scientists. Copper alone offers useful qualities, yet its combination with tin produces something far more remarkable. The resulting bronze is harder, stronger, and more durable than either material by itself. Tools become increasingly effective, decorative objects grow more refined, and weapons gain new strength. Even so, many bronze items continue serving symbolic and ceremonial purposes, alongside practical ones. The spread of metallurgy unfolds gradually across Europe during the Bronze Age. Knowledge travels through existing networks connecting rivers, valleys, coastlines, and mountain routes. Techniques learned in one region slowly appear in another, often hundreds of miles away. As ideas move alongside materials, local craftspeople adapt new methods to fit their own traditions, resources, and cultural preferences. Unlike later industrial revolutions, this transformation unfolds slowly enough that most people barely notice the larger historical pattern. A village acquires a few bronze tools. Another community receives a decorative ornament. Decades pass, then centuries. Over time, bronze becomes woven into daily life, much like new leaves gradually filling a forest canopy each spring. You visit a workshop near a settlement where metal workers labor beside glowing furnaces. The air carries the scent of charcoal and heated stone. Craftsmen carefully monitor temperatures, understanding details that cannot yet be written down. Their expertise exists entirely within memory, observation, and practice. Losing such knowledge would be like accidentally deleting an entire library. As metallurgy continues to develop across prehistoric Europe, certain individuals gradually gain considerable prestige within their communities. Their influence does not emerge through warfare or formal political control. Instead, it grows from specialized knowledge that few others possess. The ability to transform raw ore into useful metal inspires respect, and workshops become important centers within expanding networks of exchange and cooperation. The creation of bronze depends upon a challenge that geography itself presents. Copper and tin are rarely found together in the same locations, requiring materials to travel considerable distances before they can be combined. Copper may originate in one region, tin in another, while finished objects emerge elsewhere. This process encourages connections that strengthen relationships already established through earlier trade networks. 1. Of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries comes from the alpine regions of Central Europe. Ancient copper mines hidden within the mountains reveal evidence of activity continuing across many centuries. These mining operations provide raw materials to settlements far beyond the surrounding valleys. Their existence demonstrates the remarkable scale and organization of prehistoric exchange systems operating across large portions of the continent. The miners working these deposits face difficult conditions beneath the mountains. Using stone hammers, antler picks, wooden supports, and carefully controlled fire-setting techniques, they gradually extract ore from solid rock. Their efforts require planning, coordination, and persistence. Yet even these demanding industrial activities remain surrounded by forests, rivers, and landscapes that retain a sense of natural calm. As bronze objects become increasingly common, they begin appearing throughout many aspects of daily life. Axes improve woodworking, while knives assist with countless practical tasks. Decorative ornaments communicate status, identity, and social connections. Some objects serve immediate functional purposes, while others carry symbolic meanings that extend far beyond the value of the metal from which they are made. Archaeologists frequently discover bronze artifacts deposited in rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Many of these objects appear deliberately placed rather than accidentally lost. Such findings suggest that metal increasingly becomes associated with ceremonial practices. Valuable items are offered to unseen forces, transforming material wealth into expressions of belief and communal identity. You begin to notice how sacred places are gaining importance. Certain hills, springs, river crossings, and gathering sites attract repeated activity over generations. These locations become focal points where social, economic, and spiritual life intersect. People travel to them not only for exchange, but also for ceremonies that strengthen collective bonds. As valuable materials become increasingly concentrated around important ritual centers, their influence gradually expands across surrounding regions. Communities associated with sacred sites or access to rare resources often gain prestige within wider networks. This process unfolds slowly and quietly, creating forms of authority based more upon symbolism, tradition, and respected knowledge than direct force. Over time, certain gathering places become recognized far beyond their immediate surroundings. Travelers arrive carrying offerings, stories, and news from distant settlements. The reputation of these centers grows through generations of repeated ceremonies and shared experiences. Influence spreads not through conquest, but through belief, cooperation, and the trust communities place in established traditions. Meanwhile, everyday life continues according to familiar rhythms that have guided people for centuries. Farmers still follow the changing seasons, planting and harvesting at predictable times of the year. Families gather around hearth fires each evening, while children learn practical skills from parents and elders through observation, patience, and daily participation. Across Europe, artistic expression continues to flourish alongside advances in metalworking technology. Bronze objects are often decorated with elegant geometric motifs, carefully engraved lines, and finely crafted details that reveal exceptional skill and patience. Craftspeople increasingly combine beauty with practicality, creating tools, ornaments, and ceremonial items that not only serve useful purposes, but also bring pleasure through their form, balance, and craftsmanship. As evening settles over the hills, the furnaces grow dim and the miners return home. Beneath the earth, countless deposits of copper still wait undiscovered. Above ground, sacred places continue attracting gatherings beneath open skies. Metal has begun reshaping society, yet its deepest influence may lie not in tools or ornaments, but in the growing importance of rituals, symbols, and the leaders who guide them. Beyond the hills, beneath ancient trees and beside quiet waters, those sacred traditions are preparing to take on even greater significance. The bronze tools forged beneath distant hills continue to circulate across Europe, passing from settlement to settlement through well-established networks of exchange. Yet as the material world grows more sophisticated, many communities begin turning their attention towards something less tangible. Beyond villages and workshops, beneath towering trees and open skies, sacred landscapes quietly become the spiritual heart of the late Bronze Age. You enter a forest unlike any ordinary woodland. Ancient oaks rise high above the ground, their branches spreading outward like vast green ceilings. Sunlight filters through leaves in scattered patterns, painting the earth with shifting patches of gold and shadow. The air feels still, almost expectant, as though the forest itself is listening. For many prehistoric communities, sacred places are not built from stone walls or monumental architecture. Instead, holiness resides within the natural world itself. Groves, springs, rivers, wetlands, and hilltops become gathering places where people seek connection with forces larger than themselves. Nature is not separate from belief. Nature is belief. As you walk deeper beneath the canopy, it becomes easy to understand why such places inspire reverence. The sounds of daily life fade into the distance. Wind moves gently through leaves overhead. Birds call from unseen branches. Every detail encourages quiet reflection. Even today, the atmosphere feels remarkably effective at persuading visitors to put away their phones. Ceremonies likely take place in these forests throughout the changing seasons. Communities gather beneath familiar trees to mark harvests, honor ancestors, celebrate alliances, and seek harmony with the rhythms of the natural world. The rituals vary from region to region, yet they share a common respect for places that seem timeless and enduring. Archaeology offers rare glimpses into these ancient traditions through discoveries made not inside buildings, but within the natural landscape itself. Across northern and western Europe, researchers have uncovered thousands of objects intentionally deposited in lakes, rivers, bogs, and wetlands. The consistency of these findings across vast regions suggests deliberate ritual behavior rather than accidental loss or simple disposal. Among these discoveries are bronze swords resting beneath river sediments, shields preserved within marshes, and decorative ornaments recovered from ancient peat bogs. Many artifacts remain remarkably well preserved and show little evidence of damage before deposition. They were not discarded because they had become useless. Instead, they appear to have been placed deliberately while still valuable and fully functional. This practice remains one of the most fascinating mysteries of prehistoric Europe. Why would communities surrender precious objects that required significant labor, skill, and resources to create? No written records survive to explain their intentions directly. Nevertheless, many scholars believe these offerings reflect spiritual beliefs connecting certain landscapes with unseen forces beyond ordinary human experience. Water holds a unique place within human imagination across many cultures and periods of history. Rivers connect distant lands through continuous movement. Lakes mirror the sky and surrounding world with striking clarity. Springs emerge unexpectedly from beneath the earth itself. Such places naturally inspire stories, symbolic meanings, and a sense of connection to forces larger than everyday life. In prehistoric Europe, waterways may have been viewed as special thresholds between different realms of existence. Ceremonial offerings placed into rivers or lakes could represent acts of gratitude, communication, remembrance, or devotion. Though the precise meanings remain uncertain, the repeated appearance of these practices across wide regions suggests deeply rooted beliefs shared by many communities. Particularly striking evidence comes from Denmark and northern Germany, where archaeologists have recovered large numbers of bronze weapons, shields, ornaments, and ceremonial objects from wetlands. Some swords remain almost pristine despite centuries beneath the water. Their careful placement suggests intentional acts of offering rather than practical disposal, revealing a spiritual landscape that continues to intrigue researchers today. You can imagine a gathering beside a quiet lake at dawn. Mist drifts across the water. Community members stand together in respectful silence. A carefully crafted bronze object, representing months of labor and considerable value, is lowered into the depths. The act transforms material wealth into symbolic meaning, creating a gift that cannot be reclaimed. These rituals reinforce social bonds as much as spiritual beliefs. Shared ceremonies provide opportunities for communities to gather, remember, and reaffirm collective identities. Participation strengthens relationships between families, settlements, and neighboring groups. The ritual itself becomes a form of social glue, holding larger networks together. Over time, certain individuals gradually emerge as especially important figures within ceremonial life. They possess extensive knowledge of seasonal observances, sacred traditions, and ritual practices preserved through generations. Communities often seek their guidance during important gatherings, not because of formal authority, but because their wisdom is respected and their understanding of tradition is widely trusted. Some of these leaders become guardians of sacred knowledge associated with particular landscapes. They remember the timing of seasonal ceremonies, the stories connected to ancient sites, and the customs that unite neighboring communities. Their role often involves maintaining continuity between past and present, ensuring that important traditions remain alive as generations come and go. Anthropological research suggests that leadership in many prehistoric societies frequently depends upon prestige rather than coercion. Individuals gain influence through reputation, experience, generosity, and ceremonial expertise. Those who successfully guide rituals or help maintain social harmony often acquire significant status. Their authority emerges gradually through community recognition rather than through force or formal institutions. As these traditions become increasingly elaborate, subtle shifts begin appearing within regional social networks. Certain settlements host larger gatherings and seasonal celebrations that attract visitors from surrounding areas. Some families become closely associated with ceremonial responsibilities, while particular sacred locations receive repeated attention across many generations, strengthening their importance within the cultural landscape. Meanwhile, ordinary life continues according to familiar rhythms that remain largely unchanged. Fields are planted in spring and harvested in autumn. Livestock graze across open meadows beneath changing skies. Children learn practical skills, stories, and customs from parents and elders. Everyday responsibilities and spiritual traditions coexist naturally within the same world. The forests themselves remain central to this delicate balance. Ancient trees witness countless generations passing beneath their branches. They provide shelter, resources, and quiet places for reflection and ceremony. Long before later civilizations construct grand temples of stone, these sacred groves serve as living sanctuaries where memory, community, and belief come together beneath the open sky. As evening settles over the woodland, shadows lengthen between the trunks and the sounds of the day grow quieter. Somewhere nearby, a river continues carrying offerings toward distant waters. Somewhere beyond the trees, respected ritual leaders guide ceremonies beneath the stars. From these sacred landscapes, new forms of influence are gradually emerging, and in time, they will help shape a society where ceremonial authority becomes one of the most powerful forces of all. The sacred groves remain quiet beneath the stars, and the rivers still carry their offerings toward distant horizons. Yet as generations continue to gather at ceremonial sites, certain individuals begin to occupy increasingly important positions within society. Their authority does not emerge suddenly. Instead, it grows gradually, much like an ancient oak extending its branches year after year. You find yourself in a world where leadership is measured differently from the kingdoms and empires that will appear much later. There are no vast bureaucracies, no royal palaces, and no standing armies marching beneath banners. Influence flows through relationships, traditions, and the ability to unite people around shared beliefs and collective memory. These emerging figures are often described by archaeologists and anthropologists as ritual leaders or ceremonial chiefs. Their role extends beyond practical decision-making. They help connect communities with ancestors, seasonal cycles, sacred landscapes, and the invisible forces that people believe shape the world around them. In many ways, they serve as living bridges between different layers of society. They remember stories passed down through generations. They oversee important ceremonies. They guide gatherings that strengthen social cohesion. Their influence resembles that of a respected community elder, although with considerably more responsibility and probably fewer opportunities for a quiet afternoon off. The importance of ancestry grows steadily throughout this period as communities place increasing value on their connections to the past. Ancestors are not viewed as distant individuals lost to history. Instead, they remain living presences within collective memory, guiding traditions, shaping identity, and helping communities understand their place within a world that changes slowly across generations. This growing respect for ancestry becomes visible in the landscape itself. Across many regions of Europe, larger burial mounds begin appearing on prominent hilltops, ridges, and elevated ground. These monuments are carefully positioned where they can be seen from considerable distances, linking memory, territory, lineage, and social status into enduring symbols visible across the countryside. As you approach one of these burial sites, its commanding location immediately draws your attention. The mound rises above forests, river valleys, and scattered settlements below. Nothing about its placement appears accidental. Builders clearly choose locations that maximize visibility, ensuring the monument becomes a permanent feature within both the physical landscape and the memory of surrounding communities. Standing beside the mound, you sense how power, ancestry, and place are becoming increasingly intertwined. The monument quietly communicates significance without the need for words or written records. Travelers passing through the region cannot easily ignore its presence. Across generations, such landmarks reinforce family prestige, preserve ancestral memory, and strengthen connections between people and the land they inhabit. Archaeological excavations often reveal that some burials contain richer collections of goods than others. Bronze ornaments, finely crafted weapons, imported materials, and ceremonial objects occasionally accompany certain individuals into the earth. Such patterns suggest that prestige and influence are becoming increasingly concentrated within particular families or lineages. Yet this concentration of status differs greatly from later forms of centralized power. Anthropological research indicates that many prehistoric leaders rely primarily on reputation, generosity, ritual expertise, and social connections. Their authority depends upon maintaining trust and cooperation rather than enforcing obedience through coercion. A chief who loses community support cannot simply issue commands and expect compliance. Relationships remain essential. Influence must be renewed continually through participation in exchanges, ceremonies, and collective responsibilities. Leadership functions more like stewardship than domination, a concept that feels surprisingly refreshing when compared with certain modern office meetings. The exchange networks established during earlier centuries continue strengthening these positions. Leaders often play important roles in organizing gatherings, facilitating trade, and maintaining alliances between communities. Their success depends upon connecting people rather than controlling them. Every relationship adds another thread to an increasingly complex social fabric. You begin noticing how ritual and exchange become deeply intertwined. Ceremonial events provide opportunities for sharing goods, arranging partnerships, resolving disputes, and reinforcing mutual obligations. Economic and spiritual activities do not exist in separate spheres. Instead, they overlap naturally within the same social framework. The landscape itself reflects these expanding networks. Sacred sites attract visitors from neighboring regions. Burial monuments become landmarks recognized across broad territories. Paths connecting settlements grow more familiar through repeated use. The world feels larger than before, yet also more interconnected. Archaeologists studying this period often emphasize the importance of prestige economies. Certain goods circulate not because they satisfy practical needs, but because they symbolize relationships and status. ownership matters less than participation. What counts is being part of the network through which valued objects, stories, and obligations move. As centuries pass, these emerging patterns gradually reshape the social landscape of tribal Europe. Influence begins extending beyond the boundaries of individual villages and valleys. Certain leaders become recognized across multiple communities, their reputations spreading through networks of trade, ritual, and cooperation. Like amber and bronze moving between distant regions, prestige itself starts traveling along established routes. The authority of these individuals often rests upon relationships rather than formal institutions. Their names become associated with successful ceremonies, important gatherings, and ancestral traditions. Communities separated by considerable distances may still recognize the same respected figures or influential families. In this way, social connections expand beyond local horizons and contribute to a broader regional identity. At the same time, everyday life remains firmly anchored in familiar routines. Farmers continue cultivating fields according to seasonal rhythms that have guided generations before them. Families maintain homes, care for livestock, and prepare for changing weather. Children learn practical skills from elders. The foundations of society remain agricultural, stable, and closely connected to the natural world. This balance between continuity and gradual transformation gives the period much of its distinctive character. New forms of symbolic authority emerge without abruptly replacing older traditions. Innovation develops alongside long-established customs. Communities adapt at a pace that feels manageable, allowing social complexity to increase while preserving the familiar structures that provide stability and cohesion. Beneath the surface, however, a broader transformation is quietly unfolding. Networks of ritual, exchange, ancestry, and prestige continue expanding across larger territories. Communities once connected mainly through neighboring settlements now participate in wider systems of interaction. Slowly and almost imperceptibly, the foundations of regional influence are taking shape, preparing Europe for the next stage of its long historical journey. As night settles over the hilltop mounds, the stars appear above the darkened landscape just as they have for countless generations. Below, villages rest peacefully beside rivers and forests. Above, the monuments stand watch over the memories of influential ancestors. And beyond the horizon, these growing networks of ritual power are preparing Europe for an even deeper transformation, one that will gradually reshape the structure of tribal society itself. The burial mounds of influential lineages still rest beneath the stars, and the networks of ritual authority continue linking distant communities. As centuries pass and Europe enters the Iron Age, new landmarks begin appearing across the landscape. Rising above forests and valleys, hill forts emerge upon ridges and elevated plateaus, their outlines visible from many miles away. You approach one of these hilltop settlements during the soft light of early morning. From a distance, its earthworks follow the contours of the hill like gentle waves frozen in place. Timber palisades crown the embankments, while narrow entrances guide travelers toward the heart of the enclosure. The structure appears impressive, yet surprisingly harmonious with the surrounding landscape. For many years, historians assumed that hill forts served primarily as defensive strongholds. Certainly their elevated positions provide excellent visibility and their walls offer protection when needed. Yet modern archaeological research paints a more complex picture. These sites often function as centers of trade, ceremony, administration, and community gathering as much as military refuges. Standing inside one of these enclosures, you notice evidence of everyday life rather than constant preparation for conflict. Houses cluster around open spaces. Workshops produce tools and ornaments. Livestock move between fenced areas. Smoke rises gently from hearths. The atmosphere feels more like a bustling regional center than a fortress awaiting siege. Many hill forts occupy strategic locations near established travel routes. Paths connecting valleys, rivers, and neighboring settlements frequently converge near these elevated sites. Such positioning allows them to serve as hubs within expanding social networks. People arrive not only for protection, but also for exchange, celebration, and communication. The Iron Age introduces new technologies and materials into daily life. Iron tools become increasingly common across many regions. Compared to bronze, iron offers different advantages and eventually becomes more widely available. Yet the transition unfolds gradually. Communities adapt over generations rather than abandoning older practices overnight. As you walk through the settlement, skilled craftspeople shape metal, wood, leather, and textiles with remarkable expertise. Their workshops reflect centuries of accumulated knowledge. Every object reveals careful attention to both function and appearance. Even practical tools often display decorative elements, suggesting that beauty remains an important part of everyday experience. The hill fort itself serves as a gathering place during seasonal festivals. Families from surrounding settlements arrive with goods to exchange, stories to share, and ceremonies to observe. These events strengthen regional identities and reinforce relationships that extend far beyond individual villages. Social networks continue growing wider and more interconnected. One particularly fascinating region emerges in present-day Austria, where the Hallstatt culture flourishes during the early Iron Age. Nestled among lakes, mountains, and forested slopes, this community develops in a landscape of remarkable natural beauty. Its prosperity becomes closely linked to nearby salt deposits, a resource so valuable that it quietly shapes trade, wealth, and cultural influence across much of Europe. Salt is far more valuable in ancient societies than many people realize today. Long before refrigeration exists, it helps preserve food through changing seasons and difficult winters. Communities controlling rich salt deposits possess a highly sought-after resource. As trade expands, the Hallstatt mines become an important source of prosperity and regional influence. Over many generations, miners extract enormous quantities of salt from deep underground chambers. The wealth generated by this activity supports skilled craftspeople, long-distance trade, and the circulation of valuable goods throughout Central Europe. Archaeological evidence suggests that Hallstatt becomes one of the most influential economic centers of its age, demonstrating how natural resources can quietly shape the course of history. Archaeologists exploring the Hallstatt salt mines have uncovered an extraordinary range of preserved artifacts. The salt-rich environment protects materials that would normally decay long ago. Wooden tools, woven textiles, leather objects, and even traces of ancient meals survive in remarkable condition, offering rare and intimate insights into the everyday lives of Iron Age people. The craftsmanship displayed in Hallstatt burials and settlements is extraordinary. Finely decorated weapons, jewelry, wagons, and ceremonial objects reveal sophisticated artistic traditions. Wealth circulates through networks of exchange, allowing local elites to acquire materials and ideas from distant regions while maintaining distinctive cultural identities. Yet even amid growing complexity, most people continue living lives centered on familiar rhythms. Crops still require planting and harvesting. Livestock still need care throughout the changing seasons. Families still gather around hearth fires during long evenings. The foundations of daily existence remain remarkably stable despite broader social transformations. You notice how these larger centers do not replace smaller communities. Instead, they connect them. Hill forts function as focal points within wider landscapes, drawing together people who otherwise spend much of their lives in scattered settlements. They strengthen regional cohesion while preserving local traditions and identities. Anthropologists often note that societies can become increasingly organized without developing highly centralized governments. The world of the hill forts offers a clear example of this principle in practice. Authority certainly exists, but it is distributed through networks of kinship, reputation, obligations, and shared customs. Social cohesion depends more upon cooperation, consensus, and long-established relationships than on direct control. Within these interconnected communities, influence often belongs to individuals and families who maintain important social connections. Leaders gain respect through experience, generosity, ritual responsibilities, and their ability to strengthen relationships between groups. Rather than ruling through formal institutions, they help coordinate exchanges, settle disputes, and preserve traditions that bind communities together across larger regions. Beyond the hill forts, the forests remain vast and deeply influential. Ancient pathways wind through woodlands, linking valleys, rivers, and elevated ridges. Travelers follow these routes, carrying goods, stories, and news between settlements. Although trade networks continue expanding, the natural landscape still determines movement patterns, guiding human activity much as it has for countless generations before. As evening approaches, activity within the hill fort gradually begins to slow. Merchants conclude their exchanges and prepare for departure. Craftspeople carefully set aside tools after a day's work. Families return to homes sheltered within the protective earthworks. Beyond the settlement, cultivated fields stretch toward distant horizons beneath the warm glow of fading sunlight. The Age of Hillforts reflects a society balancing continuity with gradual innovation. Expanding trade networks, technological developments, and growing centers of influence reshape communities without disrupting their foundations. Agriculture, kinship, and shared traditions remain central to daily life. Across Europe, broader cultural horizons continue opening, yet the familiar rhythms of the countryside still guide the flow of each passing season. Night settles gently across the hills. Beneath the stars, the hill forts overlook dark forests stretching toward distant horizons. Beyond these ridges, new cultural currents are slowly spreading across Europe. Languages, artistic traditions, and shared identities travel ever farther, gradually shaping the wider Celtic world that is beginning to emerge. The hill forts remain scattered across the landscape like quiet guardians watching over forests, rivers, and distant valleys. Beneath their earthworks, generations continue their familiar routines. Yet beyond the horizon, subtle cultural currents are moving across Europe. New artistic styles, shared traditions, and related languages begin linking communities separated by remarkable distances. You now enter a world commonly associated with the Celts, though it is far from a single kingdom or unified nation. Instead, it consists of numerous tribes and regional societies spread across Europe. Each community maintains its own traditions and identity, yet many share cultural characteristics that create connections across surprisingly large distances. The expansion of Celtic culture unfolds gradually over many centuries. It does not advance through a single wave of conquest or centralized rule. Rather, it spreads like ripples across calm water. Trade, migration, intermarriage, diplomacy, and shared customs carry ideas between communities, allowing new influences to blend naturally with long-established local traditions. From Central Europe to the Atlantic coast, and from the British Isles to regions near the Mediterranean, Celtic influences become increasingly visible. Travelers moving between settlements encounter familiar artistic motifs, related languages, and comparable ceremonial traditions. The continent begins feeling more interconnected than ever before. One of the most striking features of Celtic culture appears in its art. Archaeologists refer to the later flowering of this tradition as Latin art, named after a site discovered in Switzerland. Its designs are instantly recognizable for their flowing curves, spirals, and elegant patterns that seem constantly in motion. You examine a finely crafted brooch created by an Iron Age artisan. Its metal surface flows with graceful curves and intricate patterns that resemble winding rivers, climbing vines, and delicate tendrils reaching outward. Nothing appears rigid or static. Instead, the design seems almost alive, moving across the object with the same natural rhythm found throughout the landscape. Unlike many later artistic traditions that emphasize strict symmetry and geometric order, these decorations embrace movement and fluidity. Lines curve and intertwine in unexpected ways, guiding the eye from one detail to the next. The effect feels remarkably organic, as though the artisan is capturing the quiet energy of nature rather than imposing order upon it. This artistic style reflects a worldview deeply connected to the natural environment. Spirals echo unfurling plants, while flowing curves mirror rivers crossing the countryside. Interwoven motifs suggest relationships between people, animals, and the wider world around them. Even everyday objects become opportunities to express ideas about continuity, balance, and the constant movement of life through time. Archaeological discoveries reveal that Celtic craftspeople achieve remarkable levels of skill. Metalworkers create intricate jewelry, ceremonial objects, and finely decorated weapons. Their work demonstrates technical mastery while preserving a strong sense of artistic individuality. Beauty and craftsmanship remain closely intertwined throughout the Celtic world. Despite these shared cultural elements, no single Celtic empire emerges to dominate Europe. Communities remain organized into tribes, chiefdoms, and regional alliances. Leadership varies from place to place. Local identities remain important. The Celtic world functions more like a network of related cultures than a centralized political structure. Anthropologists often point to this flexibility as one reason Celtic traditions spread so successfully. Communities can participate in broader cultural networks without surrendering local autonomy. Shared ideas strengthen connections while allowing regional differences to flourish. Unity and diversity coexist in a surprisingly balanced way. Trade continues playing a vital role throughout this expanding Celtic world. Salt, metals, livestock, textiles, and finely crafted goods travel along routes linking distant regions. Merchants and travelers carry more than physical products. They also transport stories, ideas, songs, and innovations. Each exchange strengthens the invisible connections that gradually bind communities together across vast landscapes. You might imagine a traveler arriving at a distant settlement after many weeks on the road. As evening gathers around the hearth fire, news from faraway valleys becomes a treasured resource. In a world without newspapers, radio, or social media, an experienced traveler serves as a living network of information, carrying knowledge wherever the journey leads. Religion and spirituality also evolve within these expanding cultural landscapes. Sacred groves remain important. Rivers, springs, and natural landmarks continue attracting offerings and ceremonies. The spiritual traditions of earlier centuries are not abandoned. Instead, they adapt and merge with newer cultural influences moving across Europe. Many scholars believe that oral tradition plays a vital role during this period. Knowledge, history, law, and mythology are preserved through memory and storytelling rather than writing. Skilled speakers become highly respected within their communities. Entire generations learn about the past through carefully maintained traditions passed from voice to voice. Meanwhile, daily life remains rooted in familiar foundations that have guided communities for generations. Families continue cultivating fields, tending livestock, and preparing for changing seasons much as their ancestors once did. Planting, harvesting, and communal celebrations still shape the rhythm of the year. Around hearth fires, children learn practical skills, stories, and traditions from parents and elders. The larger cultural transformations unfold gradually around these enduring routines. New ideas travel between distant regions, yet they rarely disrupt everyday life. Communities adapt slowly, blending innovation with established customs. This measured pace allows traditions to remain strong even as broader networks of exchange and cultural interaction continue expanding across the European landscape. The land itself reflects this balance between continuity and change. Hillforts remain active centers of gathering trade and community life. Ancient sacred places continue attracting visitors long after their original builders have passed from memory. New artistic styles appear along old pathways, creating subtle layers of cultural development while preserving connections to the past. Archaeological evidence suggests that contacts with Mediterranean civilizations become increasingly significant during this period. Imported goods occasionally arrive in Celtic territories, while local products move southward through established trade routes. These exchanges introduce communities to wider economic and cultural networks, gradually linking Europe to regions beyond its traditional horizons without erasing local identities. As evening settles across the continent, countless hearth fires flicker beneath the darkening sky. Though separated by forests, rivers, and mountain ranges, many communities now participate in overlapping networks that extend farther than ever before. Languages may differ and customs may vary, yet shared traditions continue weaving distant peoples together across the vast landscape of Iron Age Europe. The stars emerge one by one above the sleeping landscape. Beneath them, Celtic societies flourish across broad regions of Europe, carrying forward ancient traditions while embracing new influences. Their world remains dynamic, yet deeply rooted in familiar rhythms. And beyond the horizon, another great encounter is slowly approaching as roads, laws, merchants, and armies from the Mediterranean begin moving northward toward the forests of Europe. The hill forts still crown the ridges, and the forests continue stretching across much of Europe beneath the changing seasons. Yet far to the south, another civilization has been steadily expanding its influence. Its roads reach farther each generation. Its merchants travel farther from home. Its laws, customs, and institutions begin touching lands once separated by great distances. You stand at the edge of a changing world as Rome gradually moves northward. To many later observers, Roman expansion appears inevitable, but to those living through the period, it unfolds slowly across generations. Traders arrive before soldiers. Ideas arrive alongside goods. New opportunities emerge long before permanent frontiers take shape. The Romans bring much more than military organization. They carry engineering knowledge refined over centuries. Stone roads cross difficult terrain with remarkable efficiency. Bridges connect riverbanks that once depended on seasonal crossings. Administrative systems help coordinate increasingly complex societies. Even simple infrastructure begins reshaping daily life in subtle ways. A Roman road can seem almost miraculous to communities accustomed to muddy tracks and winding forest paths. Straight, durable, and carefully maintained, these routes allow people, goods, and information to travel more efficiently. They are practical achievements, though one suspects they would also inspire endless debates about construction budgets if ancient town meetings survived. Merchants quickly recognize the advantages. Trade increases along newly established routes. Salt, metals, pottery, textiles, and agricultural products move between regions with greater consistency. Markets grow larger, connections deepen, Communities that once interacted only occasionally now find themselves participating in broader economic networks. Roman influence also introduces new concepts of law and governance. Local leaders encounter administrative structures that differ significantly from traditional tribal systems. Some communities adopt selected practices. Others maintain older customs while selectively incorporating useful innovations. Adaptation proves more common than complete transformation. You notice that responses to Rome vary greatly across Europe. Certain tribes establish close trading relationships with Roman settlements. Some leaders seek alliances that offer economic benefits and political prestige. Others remain cautious, preferring to preserve long-standing traditions that have guided their societies for centuries. The interaction rarely follows a simple pattern of acceptance or resistance. Human societies are rarely so straightforward. Many communities embrace Roman goods while maintaining local beliefs. Others adopt aspects of Roman administration while preserving their own languages and social structures. Cultural exchange moves in multiple directions simultaneously. Along frontier regions, daily life becomes especially interesting. Roman merchants negotiate with tribal leaders. Craftspeople adapt foreign designs into local artistic traditions. Families encounter new products and ideas arriving from distant provinces. The borderlands evolve into places where different worlds meet without fully replacing one another. One of the most famous events of this era unfolds in 9 CE within the dense woodlands of Germania. Deep among forests, marshes, and narrow pathways, an alliance of Germanic tribes led by Arminius confronts 3 Roman legions commanded by Publius Quinctilius Varus. The encounter becomes known as the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, a turning point that leaves a lasting mark on Roman history. For Rome, the defeat carries consequences far beyond the loss of soldiers. It prompts a reassessment of expansion beyond the Rhine and influences imperial strategy for generations afterward. Yet the forests themselves remain unchanged. Trees continue growing, rivers continue flowing, and local communities carry on with daily life. While the memory of the battle quietly becomes part of the frontier's enduring story, the battle itself is significant not simply because of military losses, but because of its long-term consequences. Following the defeat, Roman expansion east of the Rhine largely slows. Over time, the frontier stabilizes. For centuries, the Rhine and Danube rivers helped define the boundary between Roman territories and neighboring tribal societies. Yet even as political borders become more clearly established, cultural interaction continues. Trade does not stop at the frontier. Neither do ideas, technologies, or personal relationships. The boundary functions less like a wall and more like a meeting place where different traditions encounter one another on a regular basis. Archaeological evidence reveals this ongoing exchange. Roman goods appear in settlements beyond imperial borders. Local products reach Roman markets. Decorative styles blend influences from multiple cultures. Even objects found in burials often reflect both indigenous traditions and imported elements from the Mediterranean world. You can imagine a trader crossing the frontier with a cart filled with goods. He may speak more than one language. He understands different customs and expectations. To him, the border is not merely a line separating societies. It is an opportunity to connect them, one conversation and one transaction at a time. Meanwhile, ordinary people continue living lives shaped by familiar responsibilities and routines. Fields still require constant attention throughout the growing season. Livestock must be cared for and protected. Families gather around evening fires to share meals and stories. The large historical changes unfolding across Europe often feel distant compared with the practical demands of everyday life. For most communities, daily existence remains closely connected to the rhythms of nature. The arrival of spring signals planting, while autumn brings harvest and preparation for winter. Children learn skills from parents and elders much as previous generations have done. Beneath the influence of expanding trade and new cultural contacts, these long-established patterns continue providing stability and continuity. The forests themselves remain powerful symbols of endurance across the landscape. Roman roads may stretch through certain regions, yet vast woodlands still cover enormous territories beyond the frontier. Ancient sacred places continue attracting visitors, while rivers remain essential routes for travel and exchange. Nature preserves visible connections to traditions that long predate imperial expansion and political boundaries. As generations pass, cultural distinctions gradually become less rigid than before. Local elites may adopt Roman clothing, imported goods, or architectural styles while maintaining strong tribal identities. Roman settlers often learn regional customs and adapt to local conditions. Children grow up within environments shaped by multiple influences, making cultural blending an increasingly ordinary feature of daily life. Historians often describe this process as Romanization, yet the reality is more complex than a simple transfer of ideas from one society to another. The frontier changes both worlds simultaneously. Rome influences tribal communities, but local traditions also shape frontier provinces and imperial culture. Across centuries, exchange proves far more enduring and transformative than straightforward domination ever could be. As night settles across Europe, Roman roads fade into darkness beside far older forest paths. A merchant secures his goods for the evening. Families gather quietly around hearth fires. Beyond the frontier, ancient rituals continue beneath the stars. Rome has not replaced the old world. Instead, both traditions gradually intertwine, creating a lasting cultural tapestry that will endure long after empires begin to fade. The Roman roads have faded into the distance now. The hill forts rest quietly upon their ridges. The sacred groves stand beneath moonlit skies. As the centuries continue their endless procession, the world you have traveled through begins to soften around the edges. Like an old memory slowly settling into silence, you look across northern Europe and see landscapes that once held countless communities. Tribes gathered beside rivers, ritual leaders guided ceremonies beneath ancient trees. Traders carried amber, bronze, and stories across remarkable distances. Entire social worlds flourished here, shaping lives that felt every bit as immediate and important as our own. Yet time possesses a patience unlike anything humans can imagine. Generation follows generation. Forests advance and retreat. Rivers alter their courses. Hills slowly weather beneath wind and rain. The traces of once powerful communities gradually become hidden beneath soil, roots, and layers of forgotten seasons. The names of most leaders have vanished completely. The voices of countless storytellers have disappeared into history. The details of individual lives are largely lost. We do not know their favorite songs, their private hopes, or whether they occasionally postpone chores with the same enthusiasm people use today when avoiding household paperwork. What remains instead are fragments: a polished stone tool, a bronze ornament resting in a riverbed, a burial mound overlooking a valley, a circle of standing stones facing the sky. These objects endure not because they preserve complete stories, but because they quietly remind us that those stories once existed. You return once more to the great monuments scattered across prehistoric Europe, where time feels slower than memory itself. Newgrange still receives the winter solstice light with quiet precision. Ancient dolmens stand in open fields without complaint or movement. Stone circles continue casting long, patient shadows beneath changing skies, as if waiting for something that never arrives. There is a quiet comfort in their endurance, a sense of stability that does not depend on any single human life. These monuments do not preserve the names of kings, warriors, or celebrated leaders. Instead, they represent collective human effort, shaped gradually by many hands across generations, each contribution small, yet together forming something far larger than any individual life. The forests around these sites have transformed countless times throughout the centuries. Trees grow, collapse, and return in endless cycles. Animal populations shift their ranges with changing seasons and climates. Even weather patterns slowly evolve across long spans of time. Yet the stones remain, unmoved, anchoring human memory within landscapes that otherwise refuse to stay the same. Over time, nature begins to gently incorporate these monuments into its own rhythms. Moss spreads across their surfaces like a soft green veil. Lichens trace delicate patterns along their edges. Rain and wind shape their textures without destroying them. Rather than reclaiming the stones, the natural world simply learns to live alongside them, as if accepting their quiet permanence. Archaeologists continue uncovering new discoveries each year. Improved technologies reveal settlements hidden beneath fields. Ancient DNA provides insights into migrations and relationships. Microscopic analyses uncover details invisible to earlier researchers. Even now, the prehistoric world continues sharing its secrets one careful excavation at a time. And yet, the more we learn, the more we recognize how much remains unknown. Every answer leads to new questions. Every discovery reveals additional mysteries. The past does not unfold like a completed book. It resembles a vast landscape disappearing into morning fog, where only certain paths become visible at any given moment. From the perspective of human history, the rise and transformation of prehistoric European societies unfold across thousands of years, which feel immense to human perception. Entire civilizations emerge, flourish, and slowly fade within this span. Generations live, work, and pass on, each life shaped by meaning, struggle, achievement, and continuous change across time. Yet from a geological perspective, time expands into something far more vast and indifferent. The mountains surrounding these ancient communities formed over millions of years through slow tectonic forces. Glaciers advanced and retreated across enormous epochs, carving valleys and reshaping entire landscapes. Even continents drift imperceptibly, moving so slowly that no human observer can ever notice it. Viewed from this deeper perspective, even the longest human story becomes remarkably brief. The emergence of farming villages, the spread of bronze technology, the rise of ritual leaders, the construction of hill forts, and the expansion of Rome all occupy only a tiny fraction of Earth's history. Human progress, however significant it feels, exists within an almost imperceptible moment of planetary time. These civilizations, when seen against geological time, resemble brief sparks in an endless night sky. They glow for a moment, illuminating darkness with culture, activity, and change, before fading into silence. Yet even in their brevity, they leave traces within the land, waiting for future ages to uncover and understand them. Yet brevity does not diminish significance. A single season matters to a tree. A single generation matters to a family. A single lifetime contains entire worlds of experience. The people who lived through these centuries did not experience themselves as fleeting moments. They experienced themselves as participants in the present, just as you do now. Perhaps that is one of the quiet lessons hidden within this journey. Human societies change, traditions evolve, power rises and falls, borders appear and disappear. Yet people continue gathering around fires, sharing meals, telling stories, raising families, and searching for meaning within the landscapes they inhabit. The northern stars continue their slow movement overhead, just as they did for the first farmers beside the Danube. The builders of stone monuments, the traders carrying amber, the metallurgists shaping bronze, the ritual leaders beneath sacred trees, and the travelers who watched Roman roads extend toward the forests. Now the night grows deeper. The winds move softly across open grasslands. Somewhere distant, water flows along an ancient river that has outlived every tribe, every chief, and every empire that once stood upon its banks. The sound is gentle, steady, and familiar. The monuments remain beneath moonlight. The forests rest in silence. The old pathways disappear into darkness. Above them all, the stars continue their patient journey across the northern sky, indifferent to centuries, untouched by ambition, and perfectly content to shine upon every age alike. And as those endless stars drift quietly onward, history itself seems to grow lighter, softer, and more distant. The voices of the past fade into the whisper of wind through grass. The rivers continue flowing toward unseen horizons. The forests breathe beneath the night. Everything settles gently into stillness, as though the land itself is closing its eyes and surrendering to a peaceful, unhurried sleep. The script comes to a close. Thank you all for listening.